Yo, what's up, everybody? Yo. Who we got in chat? We'll give a couple minutes for the slackers to get in here. What's everybody playing? Who's still playing Halo? Anyone still playing Halo? Overwatch. Nice. Nice. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Give a couple more minutes to those stragglers. Damn stragglers. Thank you for the follow, Pally boy. Thank you so much. Welcome to the stream. Thank you for the follow, Neb. Appreciate you. Few rounds here and there, but largely stopped. Not much Halo going on. Back on the TFT grind. Anyone else playing Tarkov like me? Anyone? I'm into that Tarkov big time. Really liking Tarkov again. Just had a wipe. A lot of excitement going on. There we go. Our viewer numbers are popping up a little bit here. Bunch of slackers. Forgot where I can see. I thought there was a place I could see who was watching. I don't know where that is. Oh, users in chat. There we go. All right, I can see who's out here chilling. Nice. What's up, everybody? Thanks, Wiki. I appreciate you. You're my moderator. Unofficial moderator. Whew. I think this one's gonna be an interesting conversation, I think. Interesting conversation. Had some conversations throughout the day with some people on it. Not surprised by who reached out and what opinions they have. Interested to see who hops in chat and what opinions you all have. Should be interesting. Hype track here. Hype track. Wiki, what are you playing lately? Director. Oh, is that a new one? Who makes that? What up, Bayoush? How's it going? I'm switching my low roll to top. Oh, snap. Really? That's legit. So you can actually carry, folks. I like it. I like it a lot. It's a good move. Who you playing up there? I never get to play support. That's fair. That's because all your friends are support mains. Except Carl. Going a hell of a lot better now that you're live. Oh, cute. Cute. I let others who can only play support play instead. Yeah, it's true. I can only play support. Leona is the only champion of which I have a respectable playability. I'm big sick with upper respiratory infection, so I gotta have something to keep me alive. Oh, that doesn't sound fun. Hopefully you got your finals finished or figured out. Coach Antor can't CS is what he's saying. True. True. CS ain't my strong suit. Or I CS too much. And I don't think about going helping the team. Finals week was last week, so we good. Oh, snap. Are you guys done? Finished strong, I think. Good. I can't CS either. Well, great. What's up? That must be a sign that the Call of Duty community's in here. Little 07 action. What's up, Dizay? Welcome to the stream, everybody. Maybe we should get things kicked off, eh? Let's kick it off by just talking about the situation. Current coach and previous coach in one place. Facts. Bay State COD. That's what we're talking about today. Pro players and collegiate. It's going to be a fun one. All right. So, shout out. I don't know if he's in here or not. I'm going to pull this up. I want to give everyone a little spiel here, or a little plug here for I think if this is going to work correctly. Capture. There we go. All right. Little spiel here, a little spielio, I think. There we go. Sam, he just followed me at the beginning of stream. Thank you for that. Pally boy, Sam, he's a director down at, gosh, where is he at? That's right. Assistant esports coach at SEU. I was going to say SEU. St. Edward's University. And he also writes for eFuse. Call of Duty's his thing. He put out this article about this, like, what they call a god squad of collegiate Call of Duty. Silly, I know of very well. I've photographed him at numerous professional events, as well as some other guys. Phantoms, Rex, and Druxy just signed this all-star professional level collegiate team. Just announced it today. Really interested. Yeah, St. Edward's. It's a good statement there. But yeah, so that kind of sparked it. There were some conversations going on, and then the eventual article. But it kind of sparked a little bit of a rift in collegiate esports. I know, rift in collegiate esports, crazy rift, drama. Yeah. So it kind of sparked the conversation of, like, should pro players be allowed in collegiate esports? And what I've found is that the opinions of the hyper competitive directors, specifically those who have experience in the amateur scene, are very much in favor of pro players. The other side, when you look outside the top 10 collegiate programs in some of these game titles, you start looking at the rest of teams and directors, that the common consensus or feeling is that pro players don't belong in collegiate esports. There's obviously some outliers in there, going one way or the other, but that was kind of the general consensus that I saw. Mr. Niles. Yeah, great point. And I want to talk about if this is different in other game titles, or would the conversation be different in other game titles? Because I think it is. Niles coming back after playing for Golden Guardians back to Maryville has not caused a massive uproar among the collegiate scene when it comes to CLOL. And I think that's interesting. But it's the same situation. Although Niles played collegiate, went to pro, came back. OW players too. I don't know as many of those that have come back out of professional play, but it's an interesting conversation. And I think, isn't Niles going to be on campus? And there's the other point. The other part of this is it a question of remote students being able to compete for a school? Is that the question? It's part of it. It seems to factor into a lot of opinions. And I think that's a question. I think Niles is going to be living on campus. Pro didn't work out for him. It didn't, unfortunately. Not at this point. I think Niles is a different situation because the pro didn't work out after he dropped out to chase it. To me, the remote point is the bigger one. Also, Niles and Odd Orange are going to topside gap everyone. Potentially. I think it's interesting. I think it'll be really interesting to see if Niles coming back jolts Maryville back into a place of top 2, top 3 teams. Because they have been struggling. They have been really struggling in a lot of these. They haven't really had a good result since Gateway. When they won that, finished second in CLOL last year, and then since then it's been other schools hitting tops 2. Oh, they won 66. Okay, well then maybe I stand corrected. I think they played a national championship with everyone in their esports lab for Overwatch. Think about also had some players remote. A lot of them Overwatch. Interesting. So Maryville had some remote players, specifically in Overwatch. I think about professional play these past 2 years. Not everyone had a team house played together in even the most professional of leagues. That's a good point. I don't. You know, personally, I kind of land. I'm kind of in a neutral place on this. I think there's positives and negatives to both. I think specifically for my program, personally, I'm only allowing players who are on campus to compete in my program. I've had, with COVID, we had players playing remote, and it just did not work well in terms of creating a culture that was intuitive to the goals of our program and being competitive. Those goals of the program, retention, recruitment, as well as competition. So I've kind of come to the decision that as a program we're not going to have remote students, but that's me personally. I think what's interesting right now is that there's no rules against it. There's no rules against it. So in my opinion, it's like until there's rules, like who are we to say at this point what should be the deal? I think it's there's a question of an evil playing field at some point being discussed. I don't think I had players play remote last year, struggle, then come on campus this year and thrive. In person is better than a remote. I think a majority of people in the space would probably agree with you. I think the argument in the corner of the other side of it is why deny players an opportunity to attend school if the cost of living to be in person is the determining factor of if they get an education. I think that's a strong argument. I mean, we're talking about $10,000, $12,000 a year on top of tuition to live in person. And I think there's a question there. I think mercenaries are terrible in collegiate esports. That's the issue, not the mode of which education is given. It harms retention a lot. Okay. Fair. Pro players are good, but there's a certain X factor with teams that are able to meet in person and compete together. Remote play won't benefit that. In most leagues, there's not even rules against paying players salaries for collegiate. Am I right in this statement? No, you're correct. There's no rules there. If your school is going to actually be okay with paying a salary to a player, as long as they're a full-time student, there's not a league that I know of that prevents that. Although most HR departments would probably put an end to that situation pretty quick. Mercenaries aren't bad if you liken them to one and done NBA bound players. Competitive inequality is how I describe it. That's one of the primary points for me. Yeah, I mean, not everyone's playing on an even playing field. But I'd put massive state schools at an advantage when we start talking about their tuition prices versus ours. I mean, they're just inherently at a advantage when it comes to that stuff. Some schools even have different rules of pricing for online versus in person. Absolutely. There's some schools out there giving pretty dirt cheap online pricing when it comes to credit hours. One and done NBA players are on campus. Well, that's a point. How likely could a team with a pro players that are remote actually compete against incredibly talented players that are on campus? Very likely. Because what the space is right now is no one is developing talent. At least at the top end of competition, no one's developing talent. They're all just recruiting it in. So it's all 100% the recruiting powerhouses that are the most competitive. I mean, you look at any of the top programs in the country, those players were recruited in as talented players. They were not developed into talented players. So I don't think the strength of being on campus is strong enough to make a team as competitive as that. SLU is 40K in person per person. Online is 15K per person. That's a massive difference. Massive difference. One and done NBA players don't come back to play after being pro. That is a good point. There's no coaching staff in Collegiate right now that justifies actual development, in my opinion. I agree. I don't think anyone is in Collegiate is that good at coaching, to be honest with you. At least not good at developing talent. I think there are strategic coaches that are good at coaching that aspect of it, but I think there are very few who are actually developing talent. Even so, aren't most of them in person in some form? Most of the teams we've seen so far are in person to an extent, or at least most of them are. There was a really strong Smash player who went to Davenport University 2 years ago over COVID. Was it 2 years ago or last year? He was a professional Smash player, completely remote, and he just wiped up most of NACE until UTD beat their team. But similar situation, totally remote player, lives in Colorado, would never have attended Davenport most likely except for esports and competing, and he competed and did very well. And we're probably going to continue to see that trend with some of these bigger schools, and if they're recruiting pro players. Wheats from Maryville or ISU, depends on what you mean by development. All right, I'm talking about skill development. I'm not talking about the soft skills. I think there's some there. I mean, I think a lot of programs are good at developing soft skills, but not many are good at developing the hard skills of individual games. The remote aspect, that's why you see students who come in as diamond players end their career in Collegiate or the next 2 years as diamond players in League of Legends. The remote aspect ends when LAN competition becomes more normalized. Yeah, I agree. When that will happen or how that looks and if that'll happen in the next 5 years, I don't know. A lot of these smaller schools approved esports because there was no travel budget. It was cheap. Checking in from Iowa. Welcome from Florida. 80 degrees here. Sunny. Don't want to make you too jealous. Checking in from the Snake Pit. Yeah. FISAC is over on the campus of Florida Southern. I suck, I know. If LANs are only for major events like 1 to 2 per semester, is still viable. I agree. I would continue to go back to the reason Collegiate Esports was approved at 90% of the institutions out there is because there was no travel budget. And because of that, the budgets were low. The costs were low. When you start factoring in LAN events, and you start talking about massive, a lot of LAN events, that's a massive budget increase that most institutions, I think, at this stage in esports would not approve. Okay, not saying I'm the best development for players, but I didn't turn all 4 of our 5 players from low diamond to D1 plus, but I did turn, and one has a role swap and is now GM pushing Chow, playing in proving grounds. There are coaches out there who can develop players. I feel like not everyone, but some. I agree. Did I say? I mean, I think there are very few coaches. And when I went to talk about player development and not really anyone's making developing players, I'm more talking about the top end of the competitive programs. You look at like the top 8s, like they recruited in the talent. I think pushing for residential only is something the ecosystem isn't ready for. Maybe 10 years. You get a LAN, you get a LAN, everyone get a LAN. Are we franchising Collegiate then? No, unless if the most competitive programs in the space get what they want, which is a premier conference of the top teams, similar to like CRL, then we might be talking about franchising, which I don't think would be good for the space. It probably would die out as soon as the big D1s got in. But besides the point, I guess. For large conference leagues, I could see a LAN event for the schools, but it's a separate tourney from the league. If retention matters to your program, there's a huge difference in retention numbers between online and in-person students. Possibly. I mean, I don't know what the retention looks like for online students at other programs. I think in my personal experience, in-person students retain better, but I don't know if that's the case across the landscape. There's only like 5 to 10 actual paid coaches in Collegiate, and by that I mean actual coaches, not esports directors forced to have the title of head coach. That's true. But even so, like some of those actual coaches who are being paid I would argue, aren't actually developing talent. But that's probably more of a hot take that people aren't ready to hear. In our ECAC chat, we were having that pro player convo just now. I'm interested to see. Nace hasn't talked about it at all. I don't think it would be brought up. And maybe it would be brought up at some point, but I don't think we would ever act on anything like that. There's no... I don't know. I don't like the idea of imposing rules in regards to players that were already recruited in, basically. Or imposing rules after somebody's been recruited in. I don't know. It's a mess. Bay State has 2. What is it? There's only Bay State has 2 and UTD has 2 just for Overwatch. 10 to 20% lower retention. I don't know where you get that number. It'd be interesting. There's probably data somewhere out there, but there are certainly personalities and institutions that are there purely to recruit from name recognition and don't present a development advantage. Yep. Yeah. Taking online courses will be more of an issue. Yeah. I think it's probably a conversation that's gonna happen with remote and online courses, and I think leagues will probably. There might be a league that comes in and says you have to be in person, and you're going to alienate certain institutions, and those institutions are going to go elsewhere, different leagues. They're not going to change what they're doing until like CRL or CLOL takes a hard stance on it. Like those institutions will just go elsewhere. They're not going to change what they're doing. Pro player thing did come up at the Harrisburg convention during the association business meeting. No legislation came out of it because the majority agreed that we shouldn't stop former pros from going back to school. Yes, I do recall that. All the conversation that I remember was about former pros. Nothing about like the thought process was never that they would go back into the pro scene when we were having those conversations. It was, all right, they've retired officially, and now let's make sure that they get a degree if they want by playing. I feel like the conversation would change a little bit at this point. NACE does have in-person rules. They're just in hiatus currently because of COVID. It will be up to the EEC to determine that. Yeah, I guess we do have those. They've never I don't even know if they've never been enforced to my knowledge. Like, yes, we say you have to have a lab on campus, and there's some rule that says they have to be competing in person. I don't think it's ever been enforced, and then COVID, they put it on a hiatus. I don't know if that rule stays enacted. Like, if they were to pull it off of hiatus, I think you'd have a major uproar from a lot of institutions. Our biggest thing right now is the topic of scholarships. We are D3, so our athletics don't give scholarships, but other schools in our athletic conference that have picked up esports are starting to give esports scholarships, and I've lost players already in the recruitment scene because of that. Hopefully we start giving scholarships soon. Yeah, the D3 conversation's a tough one for a lot of coaches. Coach Wiki's in the chat. He comes from a D3 school before his current role, and he navigated that successfully, got some scholarships going. Plenty of traditional pro athletes return to get their degrees, but they don't jump back on the field or court. That is true. Retired officially is very gray. Oh, I completely agree. The difference is that in traditional sports, you can't go pro at 15 years old. Yeah. Yeah, but because there are rules put in place by certain bodies. You look at basketball, you have to play a year or something in the NCAA or in college before you can go. We voted on them this summer before COVID. Yeah, it was like 8 months before COVID, because it was July we voted on them, and then the next March things shut down. So like in that fall, I don't remember it being enforced at all. And that was a time where there were so few institutions voting at that point. Like, I want to say the number was like 40 to 60 schools. Now we have like 200. And I don't know if the consensus would be the same. I'm interested, maybe legislation's put forward to cancel that rule. I don't know. But I don't even know how do you regulate that. We're not collecting IP addresses from players. Like how do we even know like some of these players are playing remote? We don't. The difference is that internet blah 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 blah. So does the conversation realistically become needing to standardize things further up and down. The one and done rule in men's basketball is a result of an NBA rule, not an NCAA rule. As a result, the colleges suffer from the pro rule for top players to play 1 year of college ball. Maybe we just need to get the pro leagues to put rules in place. If we could convince pro leagues to only allow only 18 plus into pro leagues, it might help a bit. Interesting concept, but 18-year-olds would be college age, so I don't know if that solves anything. Unless if there's a kid who's like graduating at 17 and has one semester before he can go pro. You have to rely on schools to have integrity. Well, that's not how any competitive competitions work, or any competitions anywhere works, let alone esports. We have to have rules and the ability to enforce those rules. I have a player that is playing OW with us that played in a Korean team at the lower level, made about 10K. Would that be considered pro? I don't know. I don't know. Like, that's another question, is like, how pro is pro? Like, let's look at Collegiate or CDL. Like, is having a contract on a pro team pro? Is being a sub on a pro team pro? Is playing amateur at the highest level and winning whatever amateur scene there is, challenger, whatever, is that pro? I don't know. I tried explaining this on a tweet, but yes, do pro teams and leagues understand how collegiate entirely works yet? I don't know. No, probably not. Do D3 schools just not offer scholarships for any sports? Yes, they do not. Since NCAA isn't governing esports, could D3 offer a scholarship or something that's under athletics? Yes. Yes. That is how a lot of the schools have done it. There's D3 schools who put esports under student life to not even have to worry about the conversation. Some who, Wiki's just saying here, because the NCAA doesn't govern esports, it was looked at similarly to a performance scholarship. Yeah, so you're getting a scholarship for music, but you're an athlete in the NCAA department, or in the athletic department. You can still get that music scholarship, supposedly. I definitely understand your point, mainly for the big sports, gymnastics, they do, and when they can't play in college, do they? D3, you cannot have an athletic scholarship. You can have an academic scholarship, but that's not an NCAA regulation. Esports isn't under the NCAA, so those programs can offer scholarships legally. I've heard of some D3s offering scholarships for non-NCAA sports, like rodeo, I have heard. There you go. Hey, you are on the voice account. Look at Voice Collegiate's in my channel. Let's go. We've made it. So through the conversations, it's not, I think among the directors, the question isn't the pro. It's not as much as the pro side of things. It's the remote students question. I think is the much more asked question. At least the directors I talk to tend to agree that or tend to talk about the idea of remote students. Is it the pro or remote? If pro, why? If remote, why or why not? I think the question becomes, I think a lot of directors, it's the remote question. But there are directors out there, and especially students in the competitive scenes, who think it's a pro question. So it's two separate questions, but the greater of the two tends to be the remote question, in my opinion. At least I've also noticed that at least it's for the directors who've been around for 2+ years at this point, more so question the remote aspect, not the pro aspect. Remote will become a big time question here in the next 5 years. Many schools may go under in the next 10 years with lack of students. Luckily here at Co, we are actually growing, but not all schools are. I also think every year is a constantly moving target on what needs to be addressed. Oh, thank Macalus with the Prime sub. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. That's amazing. I think the programs that allow remote will face backlash from the community. Harder for them to scrim, collaborate, etc. Almost like shunning, only if the majority of the top stakeholders agree, though. I think we're kind of seeing a little bit of that. I think we're definitely seeing a little bit of this shunning or backlash a little bit. I think we look at Bay State. I think we look at Northwood to an extent. Those programs have recruited pros and offered the option of this online thing in some instances. And I think they have not been the most welcomed programs to the scene, in my experience. I don't have any problems with either of them, but there are people in the scene who seem to voice significant concerns and problems towards those two programs. I think we'll see it even worse with UONA, Max Wood's new program. I think that might almost be entirely remote. I'm really interested to see what or hear what that situation is, but I think there's some shunning there, but that doesn't prevent them from competing at the biggest leagues. And really, Tiza at League of Legends, Corey doing extended Epic and Rocket League, those are the types of folks who are going to have to actually address this concern and this question, and either not do anything or make an enacting rule, and then the other leagues will probably follow in those footsteps. Those are the two, and And what we're seeing in some of these instances, and what my assumption is with this specific rule, is that it will probably it'll be inaction on their part, at least until there is massive uproar. I don't see them as coming out and being making a rule against it, like proactively, in my opinion. Remote students allowed creates very iffy situations. There are some online schools with like 100K plus students. You also then have to worry about students on different coasts for server issues. Also likely get more mercenaries with allowing online, since it's much less of a commitment. Well, we're seeing it already. Surprise. But yeah, no, I agree. I don't think the pro thing will be nearly as big of a deal if they are forced to be in person. Hard to be at a pro facility and on campus at the same time. Were those Illinois State killers? That's some kind of pro level in OW before going to OSU, because 4 players going pro is crazy. They all won every single year contenders for around a year and a half. The highest non-OWL league due to age restrictions. Yeah. It's just going to come down to what the majority want in Ace's case. For the other leagues, they will almost certainly continue allowing online, because those leagues are purely run for marketing, in which case more equals better. The goals of my program don't align with having fully remote students. I can't do what I'm trying to do if they aren't here. Yeah, I think it's I mean, you as a director, I mean, and coaches have to decide for yourselves, like what's the better culture, or how does this fit into your goals and your institution's goals for esports? For the national level conversation, I don't know how this goes. It's really interesting. I don't know how this is going to go. I'm really excited. Interested, I guess, is more of a better term. I'm really interested to see how it kind of comes to fruition and how it's addressed. We don't have online courses at Coast, so I don't have to deal with that. But in person is so much better. I have a big problem, though. I don't know. It's really interesting. I mean, I don't really have. I'm not really super opinionated on this specific topic, because I think, like I said, there are positives and negatives to both. I'm all about giving students opportunities and giving people an opportunity to get a degree. So I removed the song request feature. I did because I don't want to get hit with DMCA stuff. I'm sorry. Yeah, you can blame Jeff on that. Jeff Bezos. Yeah, no, I like the idea of giving as many students opportunities as possible and offering opportunities for students to get degrees. So I'm going to fall into as close as I can in that regard. But there's going to be, I mean, there's questions. They can get a degree but not compete. You're instantly making it almost less attainable from a financial standpoint. The only reason a lot of these students are getting degrees at a lot of our schools is because they can compete and get a scholarship. So, I think you're, in this specific instance, you might be oversimplifying this conversation and argument a little bit too much, in my opinion. Because if they can't compete, they don't get scholarship. End of story. Jeff Bezos hates collegiate esports talk shows. Off topic, is Halo gonna be a big hit? Then come to campus and get your degree. Are you gonna pay for my housing? I mean, again, we're talking about a financial situation here. I have a spare room. Okay, great. I'll sleep on the couch. I will lead your team to a college Call of Duty championship. They were pro. They should be able to pay for it. I mean, some of these players played pro or like top amateur, like one of them had like, or you mentioned somebody who had 10K of earnings. If we decide that's a pro, that doesn't mean they should actually be able to pay for it. Like, I don't know. And I'm not going to get into the situation of getting financial backgrounds and audits of these people. Maybe there's a rule that you can enact where it's like the maximum scholarship you can give to a player is imposed, and if that player lives on campus, that scholarship can increase. I don't know. Maybe that doesn't make super sense. Thank you for the follow. No shame in trying. I like it. Back to this off-topic question. Is Halo going to be a big hit next year in the college scene? We talked about Halo last week or the week before. I'm still kind of keeping my thought on the same thing, is that like I'm skeptical. I don't think it will. Halo numbers plummeting. That's what I said. Like, we were talking last week and everyone's like, it's going to be huge. I'm like, no. Like, I haven't enjoyed a Halo game since Halo 3, and I'm like past college age. Like, no high schoolers are playing Halo. Isn't Raleigh going to be a huge tourney? It's a bunch of washed up people going to Raleigh, North Carolina to play Halo. I don't think Raleigh. I saw some tweet about like the Raleigh tournament's going to be a catalyst for the future of competitive Halo, and I'm like, no, that's not how this works. Hummel's playing it. How good can it be? I don't think it's a catalyst. I think you put any event on with a game that we're nostalgic about, we're gonna go, but that doesn't mean we're competing or new players are picking up the game. I enjoy it. I've been playing a little bit. I enjoy it, but that doesn't mean there's gonna be a scene for it. I think the biggest thing, like Dota, is the crowdsourcing for prize money. Happy I get to tune in this week. Always interested these going on in collegiate esports, especially when it's been a spicy Twitter drama day. You know what's funny is that I didn't even see the spice until someone DM'd me about it. I think Twitter knows that I don't really care about Call of Duty, so they don't feed me Call of Duty stuff. Like, which is so interesting because, like, obviously I care about collegiate stuff, but I did not get anything. But back to this like Raleigh thing, like I've seen this before. We've seen big events like this happen. Like, look at the Fortnite World Championship. That was massive, $100 million. And here we are 2 years later. Where's the collegiate Fortnite scene? It's down bad, all right? It's down bad. There is some scene to it, but it's not anywhere near some of the other game titles. Someone brought up the idea of talking about how titles are chosen in a collegiate program, and I think it'd be a really interesting conversation to have, and I'd love to pull in like Clerky from Maryville, who only competes in varsity with 2 games, and I want to pull like Brian Hummel at Bay State or Cody from Northwood, who have like 15 games or whatever craziness it is, and have them kind of talk it out with me on like, how do you make decisions on what game titles to support? Because it's a vastly different way of thinking about it. I've always been in the field of less, like being good at less instead of mediocre at many. And some of these titles just keep coming and going so rapidly. The publisher killed the pro scene. The publisher stopped throwing money into the trash can to burn. All right. In Fortnite's annual report that year, which has become public now that since they sued Apple and it all came out in the public in the court documents, it said they would never do something as big as that again. They did not see the return on investment by any means on that esports number. So, if Epic gave people the tools to run Fortnite well, it'd be way better. They're starting to do that a little bit. Epic is not looking at Fortnite as a competitive title, in my opinion. They're looking at it as a creative title that they're going to use and eventually to kind of be the cornerstone of their metaverse concept. Now, that metaverse concept, Fortnite being the cornerstone, is a little bit of me maybe jumping a couple too many steps, but it's pretty well known that Epic is getting into the metaverse situation and building things out there. And Fortnite has become more and more creative and social versus competitive. So, yeah, I don't know. Depends on how your program is built. Maryville versus Northwood or Bay State are built very different. Northwood, Bay State, much more focused on enrollments. Fortnite, bad game. I feel like the number of titles equivalent to the budget of the program. To an extent. I mean, actually, not even really, no. Because Maryville has 2 titles, and they have a pretty big budget. They have 4 full-time staff. They have full-ride scholarships. I had the same operating budget as Davenport. We did 4 titles, and they did 9 or 10 our first years. So very little does the budget affect how many titles. It's more of what does the coach or director want to do with their program, or feel is going to be the best to achieve their goals. If you're an enrollment-focused school, you're going to add tons of teams. Again, not necessarily true. We added 4 at Aquinas. My thought process was if we're good at 3 titles, our enrollment number or people will want to come to school. Davenport went with the idea of more game titles equals more students. I went with better quality pro teams will bring more students. We both ended up with the same enrollment numbers. So, in that specific instance, it doesn't actually translate to more students if you do more teams, because you'll end up with teams in most institutions. You'll end up with teams with not full rosters because you're just focused on getting that one enrollment number any way possible. Hopefully 10 years down the road, you see esports as its own thing. You have the esports director and then 1 coach per title or 2 titles. Esports could be just as big as some athletic programs if you take out football because they inflate numbers. Maybe. I go back and forth on that. Because there's not a world where I would want a Rocket League team to be as big as, or to be more than like 6 players, to be honest, but maybe. And we don't really have athletic teams that are the size of 3 people. 6 maybe. Like golf. Tennis is 5? No. I don't know how many is on the tennis team. Maybe it's 5. So maybe there are some instances, but I'd rather have good teams and not many than a ton of teams with not much competition. I agree. It's not how much the budget is, it's how the budget is allocated or built. The only reason DU had an RL team seasons 1 for them was because I walked on as their 3rd. Yeah. So they had to go into the walk-ons to fill in some of those holes on their rosters. I had some walk-ons on mine. We ended up with the same. Hey, JK with the sub. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you for that sub. It's, oh my gosh, it's Josh Knutson. Knutson? I'm getting closer on the pronunciation. Thank you. How's it going? I think it's Knutson. JK is heading up esports and virtual reality at Gravity Gaming, aka Bite Speed. Knutson. All right. You have that as like a hotkey. The pronunciation of your last name. You can have multiple Rocket League teams though. Yes, you can. Yeah, look at Northwood. A college can be dominant in more than 2 games. Yes, you can. Hawks, don't leave me. No. Man. Yeah, so we're talking about pro players in collegiate. And we kind of came to the conclusion, at least in the situation, is that in my experience and what I've seen in chat and things of that sort, the question becomes more of, are remote students, or should remote students be able to compete? And I think that's a broader question that won't be answered until a governing body or a licensing company or specific, like certain leagues start enacting as a rule. It's dumb if they can't compete, in my opinion. All right, so tip for you on this, because I'm seeing a lot of this in arguments. It's like jumping to a conclusion of, if you think they can't compete, just saying it's dumb. Like, what? Why? Give us the why. Why do you think it's dumb that if they can't compete? I feel like COVID definitely delayed any action. Oh, I completely agree. Completely agree. OW players had players playing from Korea on North American servers during COVID? ? Is that going to stay after? Pro is different than collegiate. That's true. It is different, but we do draw a lot of our rules from the pro scene. You can't relate pro play. Oh, we do all the time. I mean, when we make collegiate rules, a lot of times we'll go right to the pro scene and see what they have. We don't get access to the same quality of servers. This is true. This is true. So the abilities are the tools that developers have to regulate some questions when it comes to remote play, collegiate leagues do not have access to. I think that is a significant concern. I think any I don't know if there are any game titles that I can think of that automatically select servers for you. You don't actually select a server in private matches. That'd be a significant concern if two teams from the north or the east coast were playing and one of them had a remote student in California, and for some reason the server chose California. That would be a massive problem. I don't know if there are anything like that. I know in a lot of instances you can select your servers. That was a question in the Raleigh situation too. It's like one player on one team made it so you could only select the West Coast servers for his account. And then for some reason, obviously, every match they played was on the West Coast servers. And that was that's seen as cheating. They were disqualified. I think let students play, but make the requirement clear and actually enforce them. That's my overall take. I think some schools currently abuse the system, and some league organizers don't actually check that people are following the rules. I think I'm on the league organizers side to an extent. I'm the chair of the competition council of NACE. I help write we approve or vote on and write up some of these rules. The question I would have is what should we be checking for? With current laws in place, like FERPA and stuff, I don't know if we can, how far can we go to enrollment check a student besides asking the director and coach? Obviously, I think the NAIA does something. I don't know what their eligibility specifically looks like. I know they do eligibility stuff every semester. But I don't actually check. I don't know how you check that in order to compete, you must play on NA servers. I think it was decided by the board of directors that in order to compete, teams, if a team is not in NA if a team is not in NA, that other team would have to play on the NA server. Oh, but no, we did select NA. Yeah, you're right. That is true. That is true, because we had a team that selected, when they got to select the server, they selected a Korean server. And nobody was in Korea because they were a bunch of butt nuggets. Will each publisher eventually have its own top tier league for the college level? I know some titles I think do, but I'm not sure, as I don't have the same teams to compete at that level yet. I know CRL has that type of league. I know it's constantly a conversation for League of Legends and Overwatch teams who are at the top level that they want some premier conference or premier league. I don't know how you make it a fair situation. I don't know how you make that fair, because we have teams coming out of nowhere every year that would not be in these leagues, or like didn't have a team the year before and then had this super competitive team that's best in the country the next year. And how do you decipher that or change that? And like, would it be like regulation, or what do you call that? Getting relegated? Or is it a tournament at the beginning of the year to qualify? I don't know. Like, I don't like CRL at all. I hate how it's set up. It's pretty successful when it comes to viewership, but it gives plenty of opportunity to compete to the top 16 schools in the country, but then leaves the rest of the 300 to 500 teams with nothing to do except finding another league. I think that's stupid in how it's built. You should get Tim Fowler to talk on the remote student piece. He's got primarily on-campus roster, but SN is like, he's got an interesting take on it. Oh, that'd be interesting. I have to reach out. Former NAIA athlete, we had to get the registrar to sign off each semester to fill out an eligibility form saying we were competing to using a semester of eligibility. Interesting. There have been schools from outside NAIA asking to join NAIS. We basically said, sure, you can compete. Yeah, has to be. Yeah. It would also make a difference depending on where esports exists at the school. Some programs are under athletics versus student life versus, school standards could, absolutely. Setup of CRL is not very good. Shouldn't it be based on scholarship? The competition is great, but the setup is, full ride schools play versus full ride schools. We have some really talented League of Legends teams. I look at Aquinas there, where you would not be able to compete at the highest level because you don't have full rides. But what is a full ride is the other question. Like, I don't even know if there's a true definition of a full ride. There are a lot of programs in the country right now who a full ride for them is giving a scholarship that covers the difference between the academic scholarships they're getting and the cost of the school. So you're talking about like a X scholarship, like $10,000, not like a $50,000 scholarship. We're talking about like a $10,000 scholarship that goes on top of the academics. There are some high-level teams in every esport that don't have scholarships or only have partial scholarships. I agree. And then how do you factor in the Canadian schools? Their tuition's like $3,000 a year. If they're given a full ride, like, that's a little bit different than a full ride for a 50K school. I have 2 students at my school who play remotely. They're online full-time grad students. I think they should be able to play 100%, but I see where some people are coming from with some of these prior pros going to Collegiate and not taking a course load, sort of gaming the system. I think that's also the crux of a lot of people who are arguing in this situation, is that everyone seems to be taking a stance that benefits them currently and in the short term. And I think we need, as directors, to take a step back and come up with what we think should be the solution long term. And when we start talking about the long term, we have very different conversations. And we have different opinions coming into the space. Because in your instance, you're saying, like, no shame in trying, and saying, remote students are fine. Pro players, no. But you have online students. Now, what about, and we have other people in the space who are like, pro players are fine because we have pro players, and remote players are bad. Like, everyone that I see who's giving an opinion benefits one way or the other. And everyone is taking a stance that benefits them. And no one's taking a stance of what is a good long-term solution for the space. And if we all honestly looked at ourselves and inside ourselves with this topic, I think we would come to very different, if we were honest with ourselves, would come to a different opinion on this topic, in my opinion. When I think of a full ride, I guess I'm thinking of like a traditional D1 athlete and get their tuition and board paid for. But for some of those, like, I had a student who had a full academic scholarship does that qualify? Like, if they're not getting an ounce of esports, does it qualify that they're getting a full ride if the full ride is academic related? How many students have to be full rides for us to be a full ride school and be in that league? We should be placed in a separate pool of programs because of it. I want to play the best. That's where I'm at, Sean. Like, why am I not getting an opportunity to play against the best if we have shown that we can play against the best? Like, there are programs who have offered full rides who I have stomped with Aquinas. All right? And will stomp with Florida Southern. Why do they get to be in this league and I don't? Even though we're better. Have you talked about the whole full-time students making progress towards graduation piece of the room? We have not. NACE has in their rules to be a varsity program is there has to be a clear path to graduate. I don't know what that means either. I think there's a serious problem with that. Because you put in quotes, I like the sentiment, but what does that actually mean? Does that mean they're, I don't know, taking major required courses? Does that mean we also have 2-year degrees in there too? Like 2-year degree schools. So you got to throw that into the mix, looking at it from the perspective of what I feel is best for the student experience. But we also have to admit that you and I and everyone who's looking at it from the perspective of what we feel is best for the students might not actually be what's best for that student or for every student. I think that's another distinction too. Is like there are students who suffer from panic attacks when they think about going to class. And like the thought of, oh, I can compete and go to online school, which from a mental health standpoint is my only option. Maybe I should be able to be allowed to compete, you know? Like, I think it's part of our job to be able to decipher what we think is best for our students to an extent. I agree with that. But when we're talking about enacting rules from a league standpoint and from an entire industry perspective, I think we have to kind of broaden that a little bit. We have no pro players, but I still think pro players should be allowed. We currently have a handful of online remote players, but I do not think they should be allowed in the long run. Good point. I like it. I mean, I think it's also important that prior pros who really want to go back to school get given a fair shot. It makes sense that they would want to go to school if the pro path doesn't pan out for them, and they should definitely be going back on scholarship if they're interested in competing. I think what's really interesting and what I think adds a little bit to this conversation of pros is that let's just take an instance like the Northwood Rocket League players who played at Northwood last year. Now, these aren't facts that I can for sure quantify and say are facts, but it was my understanding that they, while competing, earned about $24,000 in that year just from competing. And that's a massive number. That is a massive number. I think the prize pools in Collegiate create a massive incentive to push the boundaries, potentially cheat, and take advantage of students. And I think long term, there needs to be a talk and a serious conversation of if prize pools are what's good for the space. And that might put people on fire against me. But I think the conversation at least needs to happen. Because if there weren't prize pools, we wouldn't be talking about pro players in Collegiate, in my opinion. We might be, but I think the idea of the prize pools have made more incentive for pro players to decide this instead of the amateur scene or a low pro spot. What's up, Lug Nuts? Lug Nuts? Wow. I was going to say like Lug Nuggets. I don't know. Lug Nuts. What up? Better late than never. Wiki ignoring my question, blah, blah, blah. Is GV finally absorbing the club, blah, 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 blah. The difference between traditional athletes is the schools are existing under like 2 governing bodies, not dozens or hundreds if you include events opens. Yeah. That's definitely an added confusion or complication in all of this. At the end of the day, like even if NACE decides this is to make a rule on this, the schools that are affected or who feel betrayed will just leave and go to the next thing. The only way that this changes is if the developer leagues makes it change with it. I think there would still be pro players, but not nearly as many. I agree. There were talks about it for the past years, from my understanding. I don't think absorbing is the right term. They would be 2 separate. I'm late too. Hey, welcome. I gave you a shout out, Pally Boy, on your article today. Kind of sparked the conversation. Thank you for the follow earlier as well. Never late to the Adam Antor broadcast. It is a must see. I'm so glad you think that. Yeah, man, this is a hard conversation to have. I think a lot of times it's easy for us to kind of be in our own heads and make it sound like an easy argument, or not even make it like a very cut and dry argument. But I think there are actually strong and there are strong arguments on both sides, in my opinion. This is on VOD. I'll upload it to YouTube later tonight or tomorrow. I do have a YouTube channel that I put all these on. They're also available, I think, on this channel. But yeah, just for posterity's sake, I've been putting it on YouTube. That's a big complication. Could there be a single governing body that developers are willing to work with? Not all developers, but there's probably an instance. There are definitely developers who have favorite tournament organizers. You look at like CCA, like College Carball Association, and Psyonix. They have a really good working relationship. We've seen League of Legends or Riot use play versus for all of their high school level competition. So it's not something. It's not totally out of the realm of possibility. My guess is the only body that most of these publishers would be willing to work with would be maybe the NCAA or one of the collegiate licensing companies if they put enough money on the table. What if all TOs came together who work with these devs? Too many complicated business things for them to come together and work together, in my opinion. A lot of them are competitors. You're talking about competitive TOs coming together with their own goals, their own expectations. Some of them have better working relationships with developers, and they wouldn't want to lose that by bringing everyone to the table. Conversation is never black and white. It's gray, very blurred because of all the factors. I agree with that. Does that make prize pools bad? I don't know. I go back and forth every year on prize pools, in my opinion. I think they definitely complicate the space, especially big prize pools. They make TOing a lot more difficult, in my opinion, because there's a greater incentive to make sure that there's a greater incentive to cheat. And there's a greater incentive for TOs to make sure no one's cheating. I don't know. But I mean, they allow an incentive to students to earn extra money, or programs if they take a cut to earn extra money. And that's a good thing. But they definitely complicate things. I think it is important to remember at the end of the day, collegiate esports is a business. To an extent, yes. That's a hard statement because there are various parts of the spectrum of which programs even operate with the business side of things. It's not necessarily a gross take. There are operators in the space that treat it very much like a business, and that's it. like a for-profit business. But then there are institutions and programs that treat it more of a nonprofit learning opportunity. So I don't know. It's hard. It's kind of a spectrum in that regard. I mean, you look at schools who treat it like a business. U of NA, Bay State College is ran just like it's its own business. Yeah, and then you look at the other end of the spectrum. A lot of the D1s who are in the space are treating it as a student opportunity or a student involvement opportunity, and very little to do with the business side of things. If you agree that at the end of the day a university is a business, then yes, but only in the sense of being in the higher education business. This is going to sound odd, but I see a lot of similarities between college cheer and esports. Way too much room for profit to be a focus over student. Interesting. I don't know much about collegiate cheer, to be honest with you. But would be interesting to know. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd be like the most hated person in collegiate esports if I said prize pools need to go away, but it would make things a lot simpler, in my opinion, with a lot of this stuff. Hard to be fully remote cheerleader. Oh my, you are... This bro is spicy, man. Wiki's the spicy guy. He just keeps bringing up the same thing. Dude, Chew is going live at the same time I'm live. Bro. Yeah. We might have to raid him. We'll see. Wiki being a savage on the TL. Yeah, he is. Dude, Wiki's learning from me, man. I'm wearing off on him. This isn't good. He was so clean and innocent. That's why businesses, i.e. all developers and most TOs, should not be in the business of governing esports. I don't know. TikTok has some cheerleaders. The student is becoming the master. Talking organization and business aspects. Why would I watch Chew lose in TFT and get ratioed by Strompus? That's funny. Travis, calm down. That's why businesses, all developers and most TOs should not be in the business of governing esports or governing collegiate. It's fair, but that's just the world we live in. It's unfortunate, in my opinion, but until some big body like the NCAA licenses those game titles for collegiate competition, this is just what we have to deal with. Yeah. I don't know if there's even a time. Like, is there even a possibility where Riot just gives the NCAA the ability to run collegiate tournaments for the NCAA without paying? It's my understanding that PlayVersus did not pay to get high school. Fun fact. They were just the best option for them. That's so interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Well, what other... Does anybody have any other things to bring in to the table here? I appreciate everybody who's... Oof, I hope not. Hey. Instant legitimacy. That's all I'll say with the topic of the NCAA. Have we talked about the NCAA? I don't think we have. At some point, we'll talk about the NCAA. I just got to wait for some spicy NCAA situation to happen. I don't think... I feel like maybe we talked about the NCAA. I hate the... You touched on it a little bit. Okay. I hate the NCAA. Member-driven organization. That's what the NCAA is. I don't know what to tell you. But instant legitimacy is all I would say. Would NCAA and NAIA schools be working... would schools be happy working together? Probably not. If the NCAA were to take it on, all the schools in NACE would leave to go to the NCAA. All the NAIA schools would stay in NACE because NACE was started by the NAIA. NACE should rebrand itself to, well, not really, but in the back of NAIA schools' minds and directors who are at NAIA schools, you need to have in the back of your mind that NACE is the equivalent of the NAIA Esports body. And that's really important for the NAIA directors to realize. Like, if the NCAA were to bring on esports, you're still with NACE. Like, you're stuck. Sorry to tell you. Sorry to break it to you. So might as well get involved. Help influence it. Evolve showing up to the party late. We all know he had me on in the background. He's waiting for someone to blast him. Esports isn't a hobby for everyone. That's a major difference. Where are you coming from, bro? What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis? Hi, Evolve. How much for your Tekken arcade machine? He's got a Tekken arcade machine? That's fancy. Well, I'm going to be wrapping this one up. Oh, wait. That was an NAIA AD's first question for a new program. When are we going to be a part of NACE? You should be right now. If you're an NAIA school, you should be in NACE. 100%. There's no reason not to be. I'm sorry. Like, that's just the reality. The NACE offices are in the NAIA offices. They use the same HR departments. They use the same legal departments. It is the NAIA. When I was at Aquinas, I knew that fact, and that's why I originally got involved in NACE. Like, super involved. Yeah. That's really important for the NAIA directors to realize. Developers could license TOs to operate tournaments, but they don't have to relegate standards and eligibility. I think we need to separate out the two. Universities are the folks best qualified to do that. Well, universities are also the best folks to cheat and do things that benefit themselves. So maybe universities coming together to bring forth that relegation or those standards, but leaving it up to the schools is probably not the best solution. For a lot of these kids, it's the way out of their current situations. I think that's a mass overgeneralization. I would say 75% of collegiate players treat it as a hobby. I go back and forth on that. Collegiate players at like schools who have club programs, if we include like the club programs and like the student ran stuff, I think 75% is probably pretty good. Pretty close. But I've seen a lot of generalization from people like Clerky and others in the space who've tried to say that most programs treat it as a hobby or shouldn't or treat it as like a student club or they're not competitive. I've talked to a lot of coaches, a lot of directors that no one else has talked to or heard of. They're still trying to win. They might not be winning this year. They might be bad recruiters like myself, but that doesn't mean we treat it less of a competitive situation. You'd be surprised. That's one reason we have such a talent difference across school. I can smell dinner is almost ready. So shout out to my wife for being amazing and always killing it cooking. She's awesome. Drive from GR to Pensacola takes the same time for me to drive. Really? That's crazy. Oh, Pensacola to Miami. Dang. That's crazy. I want to thank everybody for stopping by. This was a good conversation. I hope it opened some eyes. I mean, it didn't solve any problems. I apologize for that. We ain't solving problems on this stream, at least for this topic. But I appreciate everyone who put in their perspective in chat. The host with the most big ups for hosting these convos. I love hosting these conversations. If anyone has any ideas for topics or formats or however you guys want to do this, I'd love to keep that Or I'd love ideas. Always willing to talk through those. Yeah, my hope is that these types of conversations gives you guys an ability to talk through some of these and ask questions and maybe feel or hear some new perspectives. I think discussions lead to solutions. It's not an issue if people don't talk about it. That's true. You guys are all amazing. I hope you guys have a phenomenal week. I believe I will be back next week, and then I fly out. I'm actually flying out to Michigan next Wednesday. I don't think Aquinas is done, but if anybody is in Grand Rapids and wants to grab dinner or something, let me know. But thank you, everybody. Always learn from new, blah, blah, blah. Collegiate Esports started as a hobby and evolved. That's why you see pros now and top players. That's the point I'm trying to make. You have a lot of the OG people not happy about the big name players. When if we want the space to grow, we need more players, more of those players. I think it's a good point. I think there's a lot more conversation that needs to happen. I do smell like Florida, dude. Hot, 80 degrees, windows open, sweating, getting that Florida smell. Yeah, 21 now. Oh, okay. Yeah, Bayous, let's definitely do it. Let's get a couple folks together, grab dinner or something. It's always humid. It's humid, whatever. Again, I want to thank everybody for stopping by. You guys are amazing. Thank you for the subs tonight. We got a couple subs, new subs. You guys are amazing. Always enjoy our conversations. We need divisions. Dude, Evolve coming in here, dropping the stuff we got to talk about right when I'm leaving. This is his thing. My opinion, nobody likes is we need divisions. Man. This guy comes in at the last second, puts in his stuff knowing that I'm not going to slam him because I'm going to eat dinner. Bruh. I'm going to read the rest of these before I... So I've been doing some reading through forums. Saw this quote. I knew you couldn't go back to the sport you were pro in, but I didn't know you could go to a different sport. I think the same should apply to esports leagues. Oh, interesting. That's interesting. All right. That's really interesting. Fascinating there. Don't worry. I'll steal his Tekken machine. Sorry, I was in a meeting. Probably with a recruit. He's trying to get a better pro team than Bay State. Solid topic for next week. Maybe. All right, everybody. I'm going to go get food. Have a good rest of the week. If I don't see you guys next Tuesday, if you guys don't stop by, have a great holiday. Enjoy your vacation. Keep doing what you're doing. You guys are changing the lives of these students. And if you're a student in here, keep learning. Keep doing what you're doing. You guys are the future leaders of tomorrow. So we need you guys to be the best. I will talk to you all later. Tons of last minute recruiting for spring. See, top AM players to anger everyone. You should. All right. I'll talk to you all later. See ya.